Imperfect Thriving, Episode 33, Your Interior Design Questions Answered with Julie Terrell. This is the Imperfect Thriving podcast with Kathryn Ely. Imperfect Thriving is a way of life, really. This podcast is a place for you to learn mindful and intentional ways to move ever closer to the life you want. Imperfectly, of course.
I think your surroundings completely affect your well-being. I think they're so intertwined that it's hard to separate. And you can think about that in terms of, if you go into an office building that's super clean and modern, how that feels as opposed to going to a restaurant that's cozy and, has low lighting, things like that. The environment affects our experience, and that's certainly true in our homes.
Have you shared Imperfect Thriving with a friend yet? Even better, on your Instagram? It would be awesome if you would screenshot this episode and post it on your Insta story and tag Imperfect Thriving. If you tag me, I'll share it on my story. And now for a listener review from Mama Writer Teacher. She says, take the time to give Imperfect Thriving with Kathryn a listen. She's both inspirational and motivational. At the end of each podcast, you'll feel equipped to make necessary changes in your life and your relationships. I can't recommend this podcast enough. Mama Writer Teacher, I'm truly grateful for your kind words. You motivate me to keep bringing the best content I can. And if you leave a review on iTunes, I just might be reading yours next week. Have you ever wanted to work with a designer to decorate your home, but you just didn't know where to start? Maybe you're thinking about your first home and don't know what factors to consider to be able to make your best decision. Or maybe you need to downsize, edit, or declutter your surroundings and don't know how. There is no questions that our surroundings greatly affect how we feel. We are spending more time than ever in our homes. That means we are asking more of our homes. We need them to function differently and better than ever before. Maybe your dining room is now your office. Or maybe you need storage ideas because you just can't stand the clutter any longer. I hear you. There are many ways to alter your surroundings to function better for you, some elaborate, but also some very simple. Today, we are going to show our artistic expression domain a little love. In this episode, we have Julie Terrell. She is an interior designer headquartered in Birmingham, Alabama, who has 2 degrees in art history as well as her degree in interior design. Julie specializes in residential interiors and is committed to a collaborative practice and exceptional client service. Her work has been featured in Birmingham Home and Garden, Birmingham Magazine, Southern Lady, and Style Blueprint. And in this episode, you will learn what you should consider before buying and furnishing your next home so that you will love your space, what you need to know before you work with a designer, and the step-by-step process of working with a designer from start to finish. And make sure you stick around for something new at the end of our conversation. Your most asked interior design questions, asked and answered in rapid fire style. Now, let's welcome Julie to the show. Julie, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get started with our conversation. So, of course, I know you pretty well, and I've had the opportunity to work with you. But for those in our audience who don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I am born and raised in the South. I came to interior design a little bit later. I did not have a traditional journey. I started with studying art history in college and in graduate school. I really loved that. It captured my imagination and I really enjoyed it, but kind of realized as I was going down the path that wasn't really what I wanted to do long term. So basically, when I was about 30 and was doing a little renovation to our kitchen, not knowing a lot about the process and not having any experience in design, I was curious how you were the best way to draw cabinets and explain that to the cabinet maker. And so literally that one experience took me down a path, and I went back to school and learned how to do that. So it took me 6 years, and I had one small child at the time, ended up during that 6 years having another. And I went during Mother's Day out and at night, and just kind of followed that interest and learned more and more, and then just kind of started down this path and have been doing it for about, I guess, 11 years now.
Okay. Well, anybody that's ever listened to the podcast before knows how much I love a good pivot and finding something, giving yourself the opportunity and the option to do something different beyond college, right?
Right.
Did you have any misgivings, or was there anything about going back to school to do this new thing with a young child? Was there anything about it that made you nervous or maybe gave you pause before you jumped in?
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, I was older than most people at that point, but also it was daunting to think about, and just the expense of it. I was really curious and interested, but I just wasn't sure if it would pay off. And that's why I did, not only for that reason, but taking one class at a time. And I just took the next class and just kind of kept going. I didn't commit myself at the very beginning to finishing, if that makes sense.
Yes. So you just gave yourself the grace to take it one step at a time and not be fully committed to the point that it might scare you away from it, right? Gave yourself some flexibility.
I did. And that actually is not ingrained in my personality, but my primary focus was being a mom at that point, and I wanted to be present, but I really did not know what to do with myself. And I tried different things. For example, when my daughter was 4 months old, she was a really, really good sleeper and a good napper. And I did not know what to do with myself. So I just went and bought a sewing machine, took a class, and I sewed for a couple of years, things like that. So I've always needed something to occupy my mind and an outlet for my creativity. So this was really more just something that stuck and that I truly found that I enjoyed.
Oh, I just love that. Well, one of the interesting things about it is that it took you 6 years, and you had one child and had another child along the way. I think a lot of people get scared about investing time to go back to school or to learn something new because they get that limiting belief, oh, that's going to take too long.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Take a long time.
But it doesn't really matter if it takes 3 years like it did for me to go back to school, or 6 years because of what all you had going. If you are enjoying it in the moment and you are doing something that you're passionate about, that you're good at, that you really love, how else should you be spending your time, really?
Right. And it just continued to capture my attention and to be interesting to me.
Yeah, I love that. So you've been doing this for a while now, and you started when you were 30. Looking back on it, what would you tell your 20 to 25-year-old self about how you should start decorating a home? Like, what would you invest in? What would you do differently?
Right. Well, I made a lot of mistakes, I would say. First of all, buy the right house. If you are in the process of buying a home, you might be renting, and it applies there too, but choose your space wisely. I would say that when my husband and I chose our home, we thought a little too abstractly about it, kind of way too down the road, thinking about, well, this will be good, for this next stage. And we ended up buying too much house. We didn't need it. And then, of course, because we stretched and bought so much, we couldn't really furnish it. Okay. And that just kind of led to frustration, because it never felt finished. And it was just always a project waiting for us. And yet we couldn't really complete. So I would definitely say choose your home for the stage that you're in. And, don't think too far in advance. And we don't stay in our homes as much for as long as we used to. Mm-hmm. We move a lot more than older generations who, purchased a home and had that one home and it just carried them all the way through. We buy and sell more or move more, kind of based on our stage of life. So I would just be really honest about that and pick what you can do and what works for you in this stage and furnish it for your lifestyle now. But I would say, in addition to buying the right house for your stage, to set aside money for furnishings. I mean, you know that you're going to need them. Don't spend everything on the house payment. Make sure to set aside some money for furnishings because they really do impact the way you live. And it's important to invest in some good quality pieces, even though it's a stretch, like maybe a good antique chest or a table, a good sofa in a performance fabric that'll really withstand day-to-day life, some nice lighting, art you love. Make a little bit of room for that. And then mix in, I love the high-low look, and you can certainly mix in pieces from IKEA, Target, World Market, budget items, but maybe in more trendy things. Also, I think it's important not to buy everything from one place so that it looks more interesting. And
yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like a store.
Right. You don't want somebody walking in and thinking that they're in the Pottery Barn showroom.
Right.
When they've walked
right.
in.
Now, I will say this, especially at the very beginning, if you don't know what things cost, I actually think that's probably one of your best field trips to make. Either go somewhere like Pottery Barn or West Elm, go to the website and really look at what your goals are for your house. Say, I need to completely furnish my living room, and make a list of what all of those items are, a sofa, 2 or 3 chairs, a rug, a coffee table, a console, art, lamps. Just making that list and pricing them at a place like Pottery Barn, which is a very mid-level, you can get an idea of how quickly that adds up and what kind of budget you realistically are working with. So even if, like, you're going to furnish your home at Target, it's still going to cost, a certain amount, and you have to think about that and budget for it.
Okay, that is so smart. See, I wouldn't have thought to have done that, but really, if you could do that on the front end when you're setting your housing budget, you would really be ahead of the game.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Because of course, custom window treatments is what I usually do for clients. But if a potential client or someone who's never worked with a designer before doesn't know what anything costs, they could do that exercise themselves and decide, well, what can I do? Should I just get someone at a showroom to help me? Or can I hire a designer? Do I want to go that route? Do I have enough to set aside for the design services as well as custom items? It just helps into getting clarity to know what your next steps are.
Yeah. So then at the very beginning, you can be intentional with exactly how you spend your money and make sure you're spending it in the areas that are most important to you. If it's important
Absolutely
to have custom window furnishings and to have all these special touches, then you might need to go a little bit smaller or a little bit less expensive on your house so that you can create the surroundings that you want to create.
That's right. It really is all about choices and how do you want to live and what is important to you. And I think that answer is different for everyone. And sometimes it's different for each of us at different stages in life.
Yes. So that leads me right into our question about how far ahead should one plan your furnishings or your decor? Should you be going slowly and investing in pieces one by one, or do you go all in and decorate the house that you're in to be comfortable in it immediately?
That is an interesting question because I do think you think about it from the very beginning because it really relates to how you want to live and how you want to use your home. I mean, your home should serve you. It should function for you. And so it's got a huge job to do, but you have to tell it what to do. So you have to really know yourself and what your personality is. Can I handle a long piece by piece process? Or do I really need to feel settled and finding the most perfect item for each spot isn't really my personality? Like I just want it done and I want it done quickly and I want to move on. So I think some of it is just knowing who you are and what's important to you. One of the things that I share with clients a lot is no matter what, you need to have a place to eat, a place to sit, and a place to sleep and take a shower. Those are your activities of living that from the get-go, even if you're building a house and you're just moving in, you're going to do it later, you still need those things. So try to get those 4 spaces taken care of as much as you can. And then, your secondary bedrooms or bonus spaces, those can come later. But if you take care of those regular spaces that you are going to use every day, you will feel better.
Okay, that's great. So it's more of becoming aware and mindful once again of what is most important to you, what makes you feel good, settled, what makes you feel like it's your home, and how do you want to go about it? Is it more important for you to begin collecting antiques one by one, or do you need to be done with furnishing your house so that you can move on and be comfortable?
Right. It really is a lot like design therapy because you have to ask yourself questions that only you can answer, about what you find comforting and what is important.
Well, we have started to work together an area in my house. And I remember at the beginning, a question that you asked about, like, what is your style or your vibe or your aesthetic? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't answer it. Is there a way for us to figure out exactly what our vibe is so that we can tell people?
That is a really challenging thing to put into words what your preferences are. I definitely appreciate that. But I do think you can ask yourself some questions and it will kind of narrow down things for you. And honestly, they're like just being truthful with yourself about how you really live. And those things will start to tell you something about your style. For example, are you neat? Are you tidy? Or are you okay to, kind of have piles of things around? So if you aren't that neat, you probably don't want to do open shelves in your kitchen. And then also what's important to you. Do you want to be able to entertain? Do you have a lot of family heirlooms? Do you want something that is unique and more of a showstopper? Or do you just want, calm and comfortable? So I think just asking yourself questions. How do you want your room to feel? I use that a lot. I think when you ask somebody that, they aren't stuck in a style question and they get to the feeling that a room can give them. Like, do you want it to feel relaxed or energizing, calm or vibrant? And then you can kind of follow that up with how much color and pattern do you like? Some people like color, but they like blocks of color, not really a lot of busy pattern. Some people like really calm, just neutrals, layer the texture, and they like that. So those kinds of things are really, a style that can help you get to your style, your preferences. And look at a lot of pictures. Sometimes you can't really define your style, but if you can see whether it's, online or Pinterest, magazines, a lot of pictures, you can start to put things together. Like, well, apparently I like really colorful upholstery because everything I seem to be drawn to is bold and clean line or something like that. Or apparently I like really neutral furnishings and then I like a little bit of color with art in the pillows, something like that.
Okay, that is very helpful. I like how you break it down also to how you want to feel. I think that our surroundings affect so much how we feel. I read about a study from two psychologists at UCLA that determined when our surroundings feel full, it can make us feel more anxious and stressed. There are several different studies connecting how we feel to our environments or our surroundings. What would you say about that?
I think your surroundings completely affect your well-being. I think they're so intertwined that it's hard to separate. And you can think about that in terms of, if you go into an office building that's super clean and modern, how that feels as opposed to going to a restaurant that's cozy and, has low lighting, things like that. The environment affects our experience, and that's certainly true in our homes. So it is important. It is important. It's important to get good sleep and have a good balanced life. I mean, all these things we know we should do and that we strive to do to have a healthy life. I think our environments can support that, or they can, be a challenge to that. So, and it is a challenge. We're asking a lot of our homes. So it is a challenge, but I think it's worth doing and trying to take it on, because you can just really create a more beautiful and livable home that supports you.
And, everybody's different in how much stuff they like to see out, right? About how many knickknacks or whatever you want to call them, they can deal with. I don't deal well with clutter. I don't like to have too much stuff around. How does clutter affect you, and how do you deal with it?
Clutter is my nemesis. It is hard, and it's also a challenge for me. So it's just, I'm constantly trying to declutter. I fight it every day. And I also live in a cottage. So it is a historic cottage, and I do not have a garage. I don't have very large closets. So I am in this little micro environment where I am challenged all the time. So having stylish and creative ways to store things or to display things that are functional that you don't mind looking at is a constant challenge. But I always feel better when I'm on top of it.
So yeah, living in a cottage, not much storage, no garage to throw a bunch of things in. What are some of the ways that you declutter and some creative ways to handle storage have you found?
Well, I have found that, really creatively thinking about the spaces that you have available in your home and using them and maximizing the space while letting it be functional too are important. We have a space that it's a historic home. So it's not like we have a true mudroom. But we have a space that's kind of a pass-through space. And we treat it as our catch-all, as our mudroom. And so I call it a tree. It's a coat rack, but it's kind of it's very sculptural and interesting to me. So when it's completely bare, I love to see it. Actually, I love to see it bare. It makes me happy. But, it feels more like a sculptural piece. And I find it to be pretty. And yet it can hold so many bags and coats and backpacks, and it really functions as well. I also have two very large pieces that I customize. I found them at Restoration Hardware, but then I had a local craftsman put some antique mirror on the doors and got some really nice hardware for it. So I'll customize the piece, and there are two of them. They, light bounces around, things like that. So it brightens up the space. But when I say they hold so much stuff and you can't see anything, I mean, just put it in there. That's where the backpacks and the shoes and papers and my son has one, my daughter has one. They're large and in charge, and they are really working hard for us.
So I love how you took something that was, not completely unique and made it your own and fit with the aesthetic that you like, but they also serve a huge purpose.
Yes, very functional. And I looked into we all make choices based on all sorts of things, on functionality, on budget, on how long we're going to have that piece. Will we rethink how it's used in the future? And so I spoke with a furniture maker and got a price on it. And it was actually he that said, you might just want to buy that because you can get it a lot cheaper than I can make it. But he was the one that added the antique mirror and, really helped me customize it. But I just thought it was funny that he was like, it's a basic box. They can do it for cheaper.
That's awesome. So say a lot of our audience hasn't ever worked with a designer before. What do they need to know going in, or what advice would you give them to do ahead of time, if anything?
Yes. Well, it is a very interesting process working with a designer. It's involved. It takes time, and it's kind of like a semi-long-term relationship. It's often anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. It is indeed a process. So something I say to my husband a lot, I'm like, I am not a magician. I can't just make it perfect. You go through the process. Also, just, ask yourself the really hard questions before you reach out. You don't have to. I'm happy to kind of help people when they're not quite sure. But often people come when they're not ready yet because they are not sure what their priorities are. And if the other decision makers in their home, whether it's a spouse or a partner or say another family member that you jointly own or share your space with, are you on the same page? And do you have the same priorities? Do you have a realistic budget? So I can do design therapy by helping pull out or negotiate those things and help you ask the right questions with the other decision makers. But that's not really what you want to pay a designer to do. You want them to help design something beautiful for your home.
Optimally, a client would know his or her priorities, be on the same page with any or all other decision makers, and have a realistic budget when they came to you, like you would be ready to go.
Yes.
And so
that's right.
If they came to you with that in mind, can you kind of walk us through what the process looks like from beginning to end in as many or few steps as there are?
Sure. So first of all, each project is different. The scope of each project, say one is a construction fully from the ground up and then kind of also decorating from the beginning to the end. Mm-hmm. That is a very long process. So that might take two years. Whereas if like for a decorating project or, we just really want to complete this one area, this one space, and it doesn't really involve any construction, just furnishings, decorating, that might take 6 months. So each project truly is different, but they all kind of follow a predictable pattern and process. So you get to know what the client is looking for and, kind of get on the same page as far as the scope of work and determining what the budget is. And you do that with an initial client meeting, and you just that's when I listen to everything. And that can be, I love to hear what people don't like as much as what they like, because that tells me a lot. So that meeting is usually pretty long, where you're really listening and paying attention to what is important to them and talking about that. And then the next step is we take measurements and inventory of what you have, what you want to keep, so that the space and, for example, what sofa will fit. And well, if you only have one 36-inch door, you need to be really careful about the furnishings that you purchase because they might not fit. I love space planning is one of my favorite things, and I always start there as far as, just drawing out the space and then deciding the types of furnishings and materials that will fit best and function best. And so that's what those measurements are for. So, And then after that is, you just kind of take all of that information back and go through the schematics and design concepts. So basically that's when you pull together the big idea, the big picture, where you think it should go. And that's pulling images together, types of things, drawings. That's where, that furniture plan comes in. Maybe, you'll have some examples of paint, fabrics, and that is when you present that or meet with the client to get feedback and listen to what they have to say. And then you go back and you make changes. That can be a longer part of the process because you have to kind of sit with it. And that's the most creative part. And then after that, you really start just taking care of ordering items and all of those expediting and purchase orders and estimates and having service providers come and take measurements and build custom pieces. And that's when all of that work comes into play. And you're managing orders and communicating, problem solving. After that is the installation. And that's when it kind of all comes together. And a lot of times for the client, there's a little too much time in between one phase and another, but it just does take time.
Well, yeah, I would imagine when clients see your beautiful design and the plan, they're like, okay, I want this today.
Yes.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, I want it.
And so what I'm hearing is the more the client knows about what he or she likes and doesn't like on the very front end, when you're really in tune and in that listening phase, the more quickly that back and forth, once that initial design is created, the more quickly you're going to be able to get things done. There will be less back and forth.
That's right. That is very true.
So, wow, I could talk to you about this all day long because it is so much fun for me. But
it is fun.
Where can our listeners find out more about you, your website, your social media? Tell us about that.
Sure. You can find out more about me and my work at my website, which is julieterrell.com, and also on Instagram and Facebook at Julie Terrell Design.
And y'all, I'm awaiting my beautiful design from Julie as we speak. And I'm telling you, if you haven't gone to her website before, you've just got to go look. I mean, she is just so talented and has such a good eye. And I can tell you just from the time we've worked together that she really is good at listening and asking the right questions to draw out of you what you didn't know you already knew.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Julie, now we're going to do some rapid fire questions, Vogue 73 question style. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Let's start now. Wallpaper, yay or nay?
Yay.
Where would you put it?
I like it in any room that has 4 walls. So not kind of joint spaces, open spaces, but a dining room, powder room, bedroom, office, laundry room, bedroom.
Love that. How do you choose paint colors for your home?
Basically, there are no shortcuts for me. I lay them all out. I go through all the details. I look at it a lot, and then I finally settle on something.
Okay. What is the best white paint of all time?
I would definitely say Benjamin Moore White Dove.
Okay, perfect. What one element can we add to a room to immediately elevate it?
Something living, either a plant or florals.
Great. Now, how high do you hang art on a wall?
There's a rule of thumb that the center of the painting or picture should be 60 inches high. I'm short, so this is about the top of my head. However, that being said, I like to break the rule sometimes, and it depends, but that is a good rule of thumb.
Okay, awesome. Mixed metal elements in a room, yay or nay?
Yay.
Favorite trend for 2020 and beyond?
Oh, that's tough. I'm not really a trendy person. I like timeless styles and things, but I will say that having a separate dining room has been just such a luxury that everybody has found during the pandemic. And I think that will stay because it could always second as an office or really just homework space, a separate room.
Oh, yes. So how do you choose a rug size for the room?
The rug size really depends on the furniture. So after you've decided on the furniture and your walking path, you kind of just deduce it from there. But I like larger rugs. If it can cover most of the space, I like that. But it definitely needs to accommodate at least your front legs on all the furniture.
Okay, great. Favorite decorating color palette?
Ooh, that's hard. I like lots of neutrals. So I like neutrals layered on top of each other using a lot of textures. And by neutral, to me, that means anything from what you traditionally think of tans and creams, bone, white, black, gray, mushroom. And then I like to use blues and greens because you see those in nature too.
Julie, I like to end every podcast by asking my guests the same question, which is, what is one imperfect action you would suggest we do today to get closer to our best lives?
Okay. So I would say, well, I actually have like just a few. I
Okay.
would say make your bed and just start the day off right by making your bed, or it can be at 4:00 in the afternoon if you haven't done it yet and you just need a reset. Make your bed, maybe fluff the, pillows on your sofa, just kind of give a little love to your home and your space. And I like to walk outside with a little clipper and get some greenery out of my yard and just put it in a vase. That, for me, helps me reset and just makes me give a little love to my home, and then I feel it back.
Oh, well, I absolutely love that advice. I second that and say definitely starting your day, or really finding any time in your day. But when I start my day with making my bed, I do feel less cluttered and like I'm just ready to go for the day.
Absolutely.
So I completely second that motion. And with that, Julie, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And y'all heard Julie. Go make your bed, go fluff your pillows, get some greenery in, and that will most likely put a smile on your face. And until we meet back here next week, go out and take imperfect action every day to get closer to your best life. Imperfect Thriving is a part of the Practice of the Practice podcast network, a network of podcasts seeking to help you thrive imperfectly. To hear other podcasts like the Bomb Mom Podcast, Beta Male Revolution, or Empowered and Unapologetic, go to practiceofthepractice.com/network. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subject matter covered. This is given with the understanding that neither the host, Practice of the Practice, or guests are providing legal, mental health, or other professional information. If you need a professional, I encourage you to reach out to one.